Wire still continues to be incredible. Except now I feel sad in my older, mature state. Let's double check his name. I think it's like Brother Mouzone, whoever the Muslim Brotherhood guy is.
Oh yeah, don't fuck with that guy.
Well, he's incredible, but I remember watching the show as a youth and then seeing a lot of people being like, he's a little silly and unrealistic. And I was like, don't you talk shit about him. And now that I'm watching it again, I'm like, he is a little silly. I mean, he's radical, but like where Omar, I think, stands out the most as coolest guy on the block, Brother Mouzone shows up, and then it's like, well, now you're like a cartoon man. This is like you guys should like join up and have your own show where you like do heists and robberies together.
Oh well, that would be like the modern Tango and Cash. I'm surprised he never like. I guess that's David Simon having integrity that he never did that. But yeah,
Idiots.
No, Brother Mouzone is like because he steps in from like another TV show, and then at the end of that season, he goes back to that TV show, and you never learn anything more about him.
Which, by the way, since we're talking about Brother Mouzone and how he should be in a Tango and Cash-like film, you're probably listening to The Big Bang Theory. Hi, I'm Nick.
And I'm Kyle.
And this is a show where every other week or so we watch a dang old episode of this beloved American sitcom, The Big Bang Theory. And we try to figure out why people did that and why we do it and why we've been doing it for 10 plus years now. And when I say every other week or so, hey, if you like and listen to this show, first of all, thanks. Thank you. Second, why? And third, boy, from the get-go, the only thing I've cared about more than anything, more than quality, as you can obviously tell, is consistency. But, boy, just gonna be honest, I'm gonna go over everything. Pretty overwhelmed these last couple weeks. And so...
everything's probably fine. Just
yeah,
in case
probably.
You're worried. You don't have to send us any letters or anything, you know.
Yeah, no, it's... You know your old co-host Nick scraping along with my wits and my skills. We're doing great. Kyle, he's on a new caper too. We're not going to get into it, but big life stuff. So that said, this is where we share a moment to really just waste the time we have distracting ourselves from the more important things we can't get into right now. It's less important even than the conversation I'd like to have where we really flesh out this Omar Brother Mouzone spinoff, because that's got legs, man. That's just
It begs for like a Better Call Saul treatment. Like I mean, they never met in the prequel, but
no.
you know.
But yeah, no, I think we're like it's very much the same universe, but they gotta lighten it up a bit, you know, because you can't have that wacky pair and not have them goofing. That's but they're hard nonetheless. So. God damn it. Like I said, we can't just talk about that. I hate this stupid mission from God, which is our specific mission from the Lord High On himself on this evening is to discuss the 7th episode of the 10th season of American sitcom The Big Bang Theory, officially titled The Veracity Elasticity. And unofficially, from the unofficial fan wiki summary, I remember this one being particularly bad. Amy has been lying to Sheldon that her apartment has been repaired. Penny has been slowly moving Leonard's collectibles into storage. That's it. I mean, you know, responsibly succinct, I'll say. But what's really going on is like this thing about the lying about the apartment repair is the ongoing experiment of Sheldon and Amy living across, but together now from Leonard and Penny, continues at this point. Well, it's actually weird, like, because I think the original idea was supposed to be 5 weeks, and this show is like no means of conveying the passage of time. Like, I've no idea. Like, I assume they've been traveling in real world years along with us this time, but Then you throw young Sheldon into the mix, and we're just getting wibbly wobbly stupid. That said, I guess it's been at least 5 weeks. It must be much more than 5 weeks, because it comes up at a fun mutual neighbor breakfast that, like, oh yeah, like we were kind of supposed to separate out and go back to normal here, but like, oh, this is Sheldon saying, like, Amy's apartment has been, like, just ruined with water damage for like weeks and weeks now. And I don't know, this is where I think I actually kind of do genuinely appreciate the episode, is that this is the first little bit of picking that unravels a web of lies, which mostly turns out to be that, yeah, Amy has been just straight up lying to Sheldon about this, that the apartment's been ready for, weeks or who knows how long, but she's so excited with the experiment and so afraid of, like, going back to how things were that she's just been, apparently Sheldon hasn't been too bothered about it until they, like, really started to notice, but just, like, straight up, like, gaslighting him about, like, oh yeah, sorry this has to go on, sorry we have to make this stupid thing that I'm secretly protracting. And it's kind of weird because, like I said, I genuinely appreciate it because on the one hand, that is like a real betrayal. That's like a real weird thing to do, which is why I think it's a good thing for a comedy show. Like, I can't remember if it was like the most recent episode or if it was like the one before that, where I remember, like, particularly it was like Bernadette and Waldowitz just having like real adult problems without any jokes. And that being like, well, this isn't fun at all. And this one, it's like, well, that would be an awful thing to do, but at least we're having fun with it, and it's harmless, right? Because the betrayal here is like, no one is being put out aside from the deception. It is all about spending more time together. But then that raises questions about, like, well, how can I trust the Amy? And then, well, this only got around because what, like Penny blabs to Amy about Bernie blabbing to blah blah, like, a web of lies. And, I don't know, just kind of like peacefully resolves, honestly, where they're like, oh, well, we shouldn't have lied, but these were cute lies. And it turns out that when we scrape away the lies, we actually enjoy living together, and so we're going to keep trying that. And so, I don't know, it's like, I hate saying this, it's just another one of these where I'm like, this is one where I'm like, I feel like substantively, this is really good. This is like, wow, like, they're getting to the bottom of, like, this relationship issue they've had. This is like real, like, meat and potatoes sitcom stuff. Just not enough jokes in this one. Like, I don't know, Kyle, like, do you have any, like that's the real bare bones main plot, but, like, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like this, almost the word I want to use is, this is like a myth episode as opposed to a
monsters episode.
Exactly. It's like, this one's mostly about building and revising the lore of the show.
Well, actually, when you put it that way, it's weird because it doesn't feel necessary in that way. We're like, it's comedy. Of course, we want contrivances because they're silly and fun. But yeah, it's like, well, I don't know. Now I'm like, even just like internally, like, arguing with myself, because, like, the whole thing could have been avoided if Amy were to just be like, well, yeah, just keep going, right? Because that's good and we're liking it, and there have been no complaints aside from the episode where we put all our complaints out in the air when it's actually just kind of weird and uncomfortable. But the downside is that, like, if that doesn't work out, does she think that they're never, like, that it would be like a failed experiment and they would never move in together again? Or, like, it seems like kind of a gamble for no real reason. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too hard about it now. We really have to think about who Amy is here as a person, not just as frumpy clothes and someone who in real life sells nootropics or whatever they are.
No, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, it's of the two of them. Yeah, that's definitely because the whole thing is like we're supposed to compare that to. I mean, as someone points out, because both times this is brought up, and people are like, "Why are they doing this?" And then the answer is like, "Well, it's kind of okay because she loves him." And I guess sort of implicit in that is also he loves her back. So like, I guess we're supposed to assume that this is saved from being completely unpalatable, like, stalker behavior by the fact that like they mostly do get along and she's just sort of expanding the amount of time that they don't really have to talk about how long this is going to keep going.
Hey, Kyle, here's one of our old-fashioned theory. Well, not really. It's not a deep theory. It's an idea I have here because what I'm kind of forgetting, like focusing so much on this, is like there's barely a B plot here, and there's a mirroring, at least, in that Penny and Leonard, figuring out how things are going on their end and what moving in together is like, because I mean, I don't know. Even I guess it's still short term on their end, just by the nature of the agreement. They're both like, no, we live together now. And so, I can't remember. Maybe it's Bernadette or no, I think it's Wallowitz. Definitely Wallowitz ends up telling Leonard like, oh yeah, well you think that lie that Amy's doing to Sheldon is okay. You probably wouldn't mind if I told you that Penny has been slowly collecting all of the toys and collectibles you have in your room and putting them in the storage. And he's like, what do you mean? I would have noticed that. And he's like, well, you haven't noticed because like half of your stuff is in store. And so getting back and Sheldon and Leonard going through it, through Leonard's room and seeing that like, oh yeah, the Superman figurine is gone. And oh, this poster is gone and this and this. What I'm thinking about is I keep wanting to call her Kelly instead of Penny right now. I don't know why I'm so much in this unfortunate like reality of reality. But Penny, her explanation is like, oh, like I just wanted to, improve the decor. Like I like some of your things, but I want to improve your taste. Which by the end of it is like you get to have one action figure and then everything else is hers. Which that's another one of those things where it's like, okay, this also was a lying because I technically love you and I'm doing a selfish thing, but I'm saying it's about us and improving our lives, but we're like letting it go. And what I'm thinking is that much is in the way when working with eggs and making a sauce or a custard. Something you might do. Or why am I saying it this way? Hey, remember our funny colloquialism issue of the frog in the cream and not the frog in the boiling water? Same thing. I think like you see Penny being kind of shitty and you're like, well, that kind of sucks. And then you look over at Amy being even wackier and you're like, well, that's worse. And so I guess who is wrong at the end of the day? They're both lying for good reasons. They both shouldn't be lying, but relative to each other, who at the end of the day is a true villain? And I don't have an answer to that because I think it's just too overwhelming and it shuts down your brain. But
wait, I'm sorry. So just to be clear, your answer is it's too morally complicated. So
yes. This is, I think, well, they didn't think about it for more than the 22 minutes. Why am I going to do the heavy lifting?
Okay, that's fair. I'm not going to give you a hard time about that.
No, you can, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to put up right now. What do you think's going on, Kyle?
I mean, I don't really have a hard opinion about this, except to say that I would be so much more upset. I can sort of like, I could deal with the whole, I was living with someone and, well, I don't know. That would be weird too. But that's so hard to imagine that happening. Like I'm living with someone and we hadn't planned for it to last. I guess that's what's weird in the first place is that they agreed to move into each other with each other on like a provisional basis.
Yeah. Well, that was the experiment, right? And
yeah,
I mean, like now it's just nitpicking, but like, I feel like Sheldon, I don't know. It's that line between, again, like being, gullible or whatever and being so uptight that he would not have let this shit fly for more than like a second. Like he would have been like calling whatever repair company demanding that they fix this thing. Not for Amy's benefit, but because he's on a goddamned reliable schedule, and if this thing goes longer than 5 weeks, that's going to fuck with all the data they planned on collecting, and they're going to have to reconfigure the whole thing. And here we are, however far out. Him just cruising along. I think he liked it the whole time.
I mean, that's possible. We don't have any alternate information to base that off of, so it's entirely possible.
No, it's a mystery, at the end of the day. There may be people that are wrong, but is there anyone who's truly right?
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is, on the flip side of that, if I found out that someone was just getting rid of all of my shit. I mean, I guess the one nice thing about it is she's putting it in storage. She's not just tossing it out on the street, which would really, can we agree that would be unforgivable, right?
I was dating a lady and she came over and she cleaned my apartment for me when I wasn't there, and I was like, hey, what happened to the giant pile of mail that was sitting here? And she said, I threw it all out. And I was like, I know that 95% of that is junk mail, but you did fucking what? So, yeah, I don't know. What are we doing with stuff here,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's allowed, but that's where I would draw I would already be upset if my stuff were being moved into storage without anyone having to consulting me. And if it turned out that they'd just been even if they were donating it, even if it weren't well, I threw it in the trash, it was just I gave it to Goodwill, I would be my precious things, the core of my identity, my weird collectible shit that admittedly is stupid that I have a fixation with, but you just yeeted it?
Well, so this isn't really getting real here, but to reference, Kyle and I both having big life events we've been dealing with. One of mine is, hey, guess what? I'm moving back to LA. Do whoop whoop hooray. Woo! And
LA ladies, be on your guard.
Yeah, and you know what? This time
the goose is gonna be loose.
I'm not going there to be a lawyer this time. I'm actually, that wasn't the plan the first time around. The plan was to actively avoid it, and I failed. Nor am I going there to follow my big comedy dreams either. Who knows? That'll be a fun thing to do. Mostly I'm going there because I belong among the beautiful people. And I'm sick of being here in this backwoods, hogwash, dark area where my oddities aren't appreciated, where I've got a Hollywood face. But I got so
Nick
sick.
belongs among the wildflowers. Nick belongs somewhere he feels free.
Yeah. But when it gets back to this stuff, it's so
fly away, find you a lover. Okay, I'm done.
Good Lord. So when I first moved to LA, for most of my life, I had not been intentionally collecting video games, but I'd kept every game and system and everything I'd ever owned. And the idea was wherever I maybe settle down or whatever, this will have a place and I'll set it all up and I'll have my cute little collection. But realistically, what it was is I had a foot locker full of old video games that I would just take from apartment to apartment, not ever open. And then every time I'd move, I'd be well, this is still a big box of video games I have, and maybe I have to shove a couple more in it and then move it to the next place. It's so when I moved to LA, I was the cycle ends, I'm not putting this in storage. I'm not coming back to get random goods after I move there. And so I guess traded it, sold it, whatever, to not GameStop, but a local game store. And I felt like I was cutting off a piece of my own heart. And even that was because I was it doesn't really mean anything, so I got rid of it. It's purely sentimental value, but there's still something about it but it's your stuff, right?
Yeah.
Even if I was never going to open that box again, that it just had that psychic value that's even that's the only value it's providing.
It's a connection to your past, to who you were, to who you one day thought you would be. Who knows? Someone with the right power cable and graphics hookups to play that game one more time.
Well, blessings and curses is I'll miss out on those opportunities to stay up on all the latest cables. But also, there's bad memories in too. You see, like, the cases that are missing a disc. Or you see the disc that's all scratched up because you let your friend borrow it and he doesn't know what the word respect is. And you are too young to fucking teach him what respect is. Those are gone too. But, no, I think it's like your stuff, it provides security, helps with a sense of place, even if it's just like totally arbitrary. And so to get way back to the show, yeah, like, just moving the action figures, like even like if she were like at Penny being like so careful with it, proper storage, everything like way above board, even safer than Leonard would, I think there's still just like that violation of like, but what'd you do that for? Like,
yeah, who gave you permission to do this?
Yeah, this was one of my little fetishes in my palace, and now it's in another place where it doesn't have power.
There's I think I mentioned this when it happened, but my brother decided to give me all of his RPG books that he had that I'd seen him collecting over the course of years and years. His collection had slowly been growing. And one day he was just like, hey, you should take all this stuff with you. And I was like, how depressed have you been feeling lately?
Someone reached out to me when I got.
Who's making you do this?
Someone was like, "Are you at the giving away all your prized possessions phase?" And I was like,
"Yes."
I mean, I'm moving in a way, yes, but not no. Different thing.
What's funny is when I posted I posted pictures online of all of the stuff they'd given me too, and like half the comments were also like, "Is your brother okay, or has he now killed himself?"
Yeah, no, that's people with me. That was the video games. That was the same thing where it's like, those mean so much that can't be right.
But some people just don't think about stuff that way, to me, those people are kind of monsters, but they just don't think about things that way.
Well, and I'm glad, hey, you know what? Sometimes we have some real talk here. I'm glad that because I think the thing here is to see both sides of it. Because like those video games, they did have like very, very real sentimental value, but I don't know. It's like Marie Kondo bullshit where I'm like,
yeah,
they are purely symbolic at this point.
Yes, I guess the flip side is, there are people who feel this way about everything they own, and we call them hoarders, and their lives are generally hellish and miserable.
Yeah, well, and it's weird. Like the focus here is obviously on the video games, but you talk about your brother getting rid of his old RPG books. I'd also been collecting like every single like book and textbook I'd ever owned up to that point too. And so it's funny that I'm like, I had to get rid of this footlocker full of video games. Oh, I also got rid of like box after box after box of books. Like I brought them to the library and they're like, all of these? And I'm like, sure. Because I was really like, I'm just like philosophically against the idea of storage spaces. And so I was like, what I can fit in my car is all I'm bringing. And that was one too, where I was like, they felt like I needed them so much and I'm going to miss them so much. I think the most I've missed any of them is like I had I had like a modern poetry textbook that had like a specific poet that I've wanted to like go back and look up. That's it. And those are things where I was like, oh God, these are like, not only are these precious, but these are evidence of my study. These are proof I'm an intellectual. Fucking got rid of all of them. But, it's nice to have books, too. So.
Yes.
I think it was Thomas Hardy, maybe, was the name of the poet. But then I think of Tom and Hardy. Or no, Laurel and Hardy. Tom Hardy.
Thomas Hardy is definitely an English writer. I mostly think of him as a novelist, but maybe he wrote some poems that I never read.
This would be American. And so that's, again, where I'm like, I wish I had that book because I'm so not confident on the name even. But doesn't matter. This is the pain. that you carry on. All these years later, you're like, God damn it, I wish I could look that one stupid thing up. Shame I didn't carry literally like 500 pounds of books with me for the last 10 years so I could have that function. But it's nice to have books. Now we're just, okay. Kyle, anything else about the stupid episode?
No, I'm totally done with this episode. I'm trying to think, was there even, I guess the only question is, was there even a B plot in this episode, or was it
Kyle,
all?
that makes me feel kind of crazy, because I've been wondering the same thing. That's like, I'm just kind of like, I haven't wanted to cheat and just be like, excuse me while I look at the wiki. But like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I mean, I feel like the other apartment doesn't count as a B plot. And so I think this one is just...
The fact that they're both related to the same thing, really.
I think this just has not A plot and B plot. It just has A plot.
Yes.
Which is fucked up. All right. This is non-conventional. This is where I'm saying you don't know what you've gone off the rails. Big Bang Theory. But yeah, let's.
I guess I will say last thing, and then we can it wasn't even necessarily funny. I just wish they did stuff like this more often, just because at the very least it would make the show weirder and more interesting, which is when Howard and Leonard when Sheldon and Leonard decide they're going to confront Penny and Amy about their lies. They didn't think about the fact that Penny and Amy could just coordinate and agree to back each other's lies up, which that in itself I actually did think was funny. Oh, now they're both saying this thing that we know is categorically untrue is true. We don't know how to handle this, which, to be fair, I do think that would make things, in my brain, that would also make things even instantly more complicated. Like, even if I was 100% sure of the evidence of my senses, the fact that two people are now telling me this bullshit thing does immediately make me want to reconsider.
Yeah, well, again, that's a good comedy, taking a fucked up thing and making a laugh out of it. That's gaslighting.
Yeah,
that's real.
But
that's conspiracy.
Yeah, but the way they decide to handle this is by trying to communicate in secret by speaking to each other in Klingon. And basically, I just like it when people speak Klingon. I wish I wish half of every episode was in Klingon.
So that's a thing where, gosh, now we're actually talking about the episode again. I'm remembering more and more things that I thought were like cute or like it starts with, a Fun with Flags episode, which, hasn't been done in a long time. And Wolowitz and Raj are now the in-house band.
Musicians.
And that's cute. Like, I remember, God, it's all coming back to me, Kyle. I remember, seeing that being like...
Baby.
Yeah, but, seeing that and being like, that's kind of, real nerd shit. That's like, oh, we're still doing our dorky, it's YouTube, but basically, local access show. And our couple of friends who barely know how to use instruments call themselves a band. They'll be on for free. So now guess what? They get the credit as the house band. And we're making our cute little nerdy media empire. That shit I like. But then, yeah, but to get back to the Klingon thing, that was another, really cute thing where, because it was two sides where Sheldon and Leonard are speaking in Klingon to each other. And Penny and Amy both know they're speaking Klingon, can't speak it. And so I can't remember the name of the language that Penny uses, but it sounds like what I was taught in high school, Double Dutch, which is you just put extra syllables on your... It's like Pig Latin, right?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, Pig Latin has a thing at the end, too. This was literally just a bunch of B's in between the middle of it, which did sound like... What was insane to me was not that they could do that, but that they could do so much of it on the fly. I actually think it was much more realistic to me that the other two could speak Klingon that quickly than that they could, even though what they were saying you could kind of parse, because again, it was just normal words with a bunch of B sounds in between each syllable.
It's a learnable skill. We're developing a secret language. All right. Not here in the moment, but this is something we're going to do. Because I want this for us. I'm not going to learn Klingon, buddy, but we're going to learn something. But yes, cute dueling languages.
Okay, that was it. We can move on now.
Let's move on. All right. Well, let's just jump right into our things that we actually enjoy and would recommend. I'm just totally cheating this time with a weird one, but should I go first or should you?
You can go first.
All right, I will go first then. So like I said, we had a week gap because of just stressful life stuff, and Kyle and I were like checking in, and I kind of like a self observation where I was like, oh yeah, I've gone back and I've been playing all these like classic JRPGs and these old video games and these really, really grindy things. And then stopping being and like, oh no, I'm like depressed. I'm like stressed out. These are my comfort games. Like I'm really going back to the things where I'm like, oh yeah, grinding, just like basic, like, look, I went from level 1 to 2 and these numbers are up and now that jelly's a little bit easier to kill. Like real bare bones kind of stuff. And I've had an interesting experience over the last week. Well, not interesting, actually. The problem is that I keep having the same experience, which is why I'm giving a mixed recommendation, which I am recommending this week. Nostalgia. And here's why I'm cheating, and I think I'm getting away with it. Is like particularly with JRPGs, but like with a lot of games. Something I'm going back now as an adult and doing a lot is feeling like there were things that as a teen I just like didn't understand because like maybe my brain was too scrambled or I wasn't patient enough or I was just didn't really appreciate what something was about. And so I'll re-explore things, media, like movies, books, but mostly video games. And when it comes to video games, what I'll often feel is, for instance, I specifically brought up to Kyle, and this is the direct inspiration, I downloaded them damned Wild Arms games because I have fond memories of Wild Arms. I remember not finishing any of them. And I'm like, hey, these are available for basically free on this gosh darn online gaming service. And so I'm playing them and I'm having a hoot. I'm like, oh man, look at these old school polygons. Oh, look, they were trying to get away with so much, with so few resources. And oh, wow, like they're just really trying to do all these things. And so there is a way in which I am able to appreciate it that I couldn't when I was younger, like on a real kind of just like technical and like both look how far we've come and like look how far they pushed it kind of way. And let me tell you, though, with each of these Wild Arms games, I also got a few hours in, and I was like, oh, that's kind of the whole game, isn't it? Huh. Maybe there's a reason I never finished this when I was 13. And finding that so many of these things I go back to visit have both the benefit and cost of nostalgia, which is absolutely getting that like warm and fuzzy feeling and being like, this is a great thing to explore. And in a sense it is, but it's also like at the same time realizing that sense of comfort and familiarity can ring pretty hollow. And maybe there's a reason, shallow or silly as it is, that I've played Bloodborne 6 times at least. But then I'm like, oh, I should go back to this thing that surely I just wasn't ready for. And then seeing like, oh, I never really enjoyed it in the first place. I've just been letting myself gussy it up in my memory palace for years. That said, the Wild Arms games are cute, and you should give them a try if you want. The first one in particular, like, the graphics are really simple, and it's like, well, that's pretty cool. Early PlayStation game. And then it's like, oh, but that game came out the same year as Final Fantasy VII. Oh, well, by those standards, Wild Arms should have been like brought into the alley and shot. But yeah, I'm glad it's out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of, that's like, didn't the first Suikoden also come out in like the first year of the PlayStation? And you're like, wow, these two games like are night and day compared to each other. Not that there's anything wrong with Suikoden, but it's that same thing. Oh
yeah, no, and especially like, and this is even now I'm still like nostalgic for it as I'm talking about how like this is kind of like Toxic Impulse, is because there's like a couple years at the beginning of the PlayStation's life that just feel like a mystery no man's land to me, because like the PlayStation was like so expensive. It's so you only have like, and especially in Butte, not a wealthy town. So only like people that are like really into it or like really just like into conspicuous consumption even have something like that, which is funny because that's also when the games suck the most. And so it's like,
I didn't know this. The original PlayStation controller did not have thumbsticks.
oh, no analog. No, that was when that came out. That seemed like a novelty. That was like I was in high school and being like, what the fuck are these doodads for? This is silly. What I have to like. I'm gonna like turn my head like real life. It's a video game, dog. And now, you couldn't have a controller without those. But yeah, just like I don't know, like I don't want to like go on because we are trying to like keep a little short for sanity's sakes. But, like even the Nintendo 64, like when it comes out, like it's got Mario 64, and that's where it's like, oh okay, this is another level. We're done with whatever we were doing before. But those early PlayStation games, I don't know, you see like this weird, like super slow, like wireframe tank shit, and, like these 5-minute loading times, and to be like, God, people got so horny for this. People like spent thousands of dollars for this, and now I get to look at it and be like, quaint. But anywho, so yeah, continue to enjoy these old things, I guess, is my recommendation, but also do not obsess over them because, you know, it's fun to like roll around in this stuff, but like, no, I'm not going to keep doing metaphors. Just, enjoy, but do not lose yourself. Kyle, now it's absolutely your turn.
Okay, this is not nostalgia, but it is about I guess this is nostalgia, but it is about delving into the beloved past. So I guess that's nostalgia, isn't it? But really, it's more of a retrospective. So last week, this guy by the name of Dan Simmons died.
Okay.
Dan Simmons, not to be confused with Dan Brown, and I don't know if anyone else does that, but that's something my brain does constantly. They have nothing in common with each other except that they're both authors who wrote really big books, and their first name is Dan. But
that's a lot in common.
I guess so. But Dan Simmons, I've been trying to think if I can say this. I mean, I feel like maybe I just don't know enough about the field at the time to say this fairly, but what I'll come out and say is it just seems like if nothing else, an argument could be made that Dan Simmons was probably the greatest science fiction writer of his generation, which was like this weird, post 60s, and 70s, so I guess that's the 80s, isn't it? Like, those
are different 80s, you know?
You know, most of his big hits, I think, were written in the 80s and a couple into the early 90s. So he was like one generation after like Gene Wolfe, who was a monster of a writer, and then like 2 generations after Harlan Ellison. But he came to prominence basically on the back of Harlan Ellison being like reading one of his stories and being like, everybody shut the fuck up and listen to this kid. He's got the juice. So when I was a kid, I went into the public library and they had these really cool, they say don't judge books by covers, but I was like 8. What the fuck did I know? And there were these really cool books that had like this big spiky monster on the cover, and it was paired with like the most badass name, which was like, it was this set of 4 books. It was like Hyperion and Fall of Hyperion, and then Endymion and Rise of Endymion. And I tried to figure out what the books were about just by on the pictures on the front and the blurbs on the back, and that was impossible. So I checked the first one out from the library, and boy, let me tell you, trying to read the first chapter did not help me understand what was going on in the story.
Too many made-up words.
Yeah, I was just a little bit above my reading comprehension level at the time. But I went back, I kept hearing, like, I remembered the names of those books, and people would often be like, no, you don't, like, does it,
You're not ready, man.
Well, they would just be like, the Hyperion Cantos might be the greatest science fiction epic like written, in the 80s or whatever. And I was like, that's a bold claim. I'll have to check that out sometime. And then I finally, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I finally, got around to reading it. And you know what? One of the best science fiction epics you'll ever read. As anything that big and crazy, it's kind of uneven. Parts of it are genius, and then parts of it you're like, could have packed it in a book or two earlier, really, is all you can say about it.
Yeah, sure.
But in its moments of brilliance, it's really brilliant. And it also sheds the other thing about his writing is his real skill was as a short story writer. So after I read his big, novels, which were really good, I read some of his short stories, and I would recommend his short story collections to anyone on the fucking planet. Like he has one called, I think the short story collection is called Prayers for Broken Stones, and every single fucking one in that is like a beautiful but different work of art. Like they're all fascinating and kind of crazy, each in their own way. And some of them he later spun out into like feature-length novels, but I think the short stories are just, because of their brevity, they're just better to a one for the most part. And then they showcase his incredible sort of skill and diversity of his writing and just his raw talent. And also the highest of high concept stuff. So Hyperion, which is itself sort of structured as a series of short stories. I don't know if he ever admitted this is inspiration, but it's also often called the Canterbury Tales in space, because it's about
horny students taking advantage of gross old men's wives.
Well, that's one short story in the Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tale, that's a tale in the Canterbury Tales, which is about a bunch of people on like a long trip to Canterbury who decide to entertain each other by taking turns telling crazy stories that, are from all different genres. And so sort of inspired by that, or at least something like that, Dan Simmons wrote Hyperion, which is about, a bunch of strangers on a trip to a mysterious planet, each for their own mysterious reasons, who, in talking about why they're going, each tell a story from their own past that is linked with the planet, that gives you some idea both of like the world and also like these characters, but they're each like very tonally different and distinct from each other, so that it's like both a fantastic little anthology, but also builds into this, sets the stage for this larger story that takes place in the later books, and also, while most of his stuff I think does fall comfortably in like the fantasy realm, he famously, this is the thing, or I'm sorry, the science fiction realm. I know it would piss him off because he wrote like a whole essay once about how he doesn't particularly think of himself as a science fiction author. Now, to his credit, most of the people who say that because they think they're literary authors and they don't want to get, they think they're too good for the genre. That wasn't really his thing. It was just like, he was like, hey, I write what comes into my head. And it's usually a mix of like some cool science stuff and some cool magic stuff and some real fucked up body horror shit.
Well, I have a music comparison of that, which is, do you have an idea who the Sisters of Mercy are?
No.
They are like one of the like archetypical 80s goth bands. Like bone skinny front man, the pale as paper, leather rain, all that shit. And the front man, like Andrew Eldritch, I guess, even the fucking name, right? I know he never considered himself goth or the band goth, because I think just like you're describing with the sci-fi thing, it's like, well, no, I'm not trying to make goth music. Like, I'm making music and people are describing it as goth. And so like doing the thing that like makes the genre conventions without trying to like be a genre. I don't know. I just like that.
So like, I'll give another example. And some of his books are just like straight up horror books. Or like but they all sort of, or at least sort of feel more like horror than fantasy, and some of them aren't really horror or fantasy, but they still have that vibe. Like, I think his last big hit that he wrote was a book called The Terror, which was eventually made into a television show, which is just about the real life story of the ship that gets lost that gets trapped in the South Pole in Antarctica, and the whole crew basically dies. But as before they die, they start to go mad and they see some fucked up shit. So, but I'm gonna give three so I already talked about Hyperion. He has a great story. I can't remember if the short story and the novel have the same name. The novel was called The Hollow Man. The short story, I don't remember if that's what it was called as well, but I think, it was, the short story, it had some great titles. So the short story was called Eyes I Dare Not Meet Except in Dreams, which is a fucking, like, that sounds like a fucking, like, banger of a song lyric, right?
Sounds a little horny.
Yeah, but it's about a guy who is telepathic, and like, but he's not like one of those cool telepaths. He's one of those telepaths who, like, the pain of constantly being able to read other people's minds has slowly, driven him, away from society over the years.
Have you seen Scanners?
No.
They have those kinds of telepaths where it's like, oh, I can read everyone's thoughts and it is killing me.
Yeah. So it's very much that. But then he decides he's going to go to work at a hospital for people who are so mentally disabled that basically, it's not a burden to him to work there.
I appreciate this, and yet at the same time, even I must say, problematic. But okay.
Well, what happens is that he discovers that one of these kids has inside his head an entire universe, essentially, an entire world. Like, it is not just, like it is not just, yeah, like a whole of, like, exactly, like, without having ever seen or, like, touched anything or ever interacted with the real world, like, somehow his brain is producing, like, a fully realized, like, fantasy landscape. That he then decides to abandon his body and live inside. I think the ending's a little ambiguous, but it's cool shit like that, But my favorite work of his, by far, just because of its subject matter, matches up exactly with mine, is he wrote a novel called Ilium, and Ilium is about the Trojan War, and it is also about aliens who live on Mars. And that is because the aliens who live on Mars either think that they're the Greek gods from ancient myth, or in fact they are the Greek gods from ancient myth. Even they don't know which one of those two things is actually true. But because they have a lot of time on their hands, they're like, that Trojan War was pretty cool. We should do that. Let's just do that. Let's do the whole Trojan War. I know we already did it once, maybe, but let's do it again. So they recreate like Troy and the Greeks besieging Troy in the middle of Mars, and then they bring a bunch of people, like, in order to make sure that they're doing it right and that nobody has any notes, they bring, like, a bunch of, like, historians and scholars and archaeologists from all different time periods in human history back from the dead to sort of give notes on the project. And that's
you have to have a real gentle orientation for all those people.
Yeah, it has a couple, because there's also this whole, like, there's this whole other subplot involving, like, Shakespeare and the Tempest, and another subplot that's about two, like, basically fucking, like, robots who, in space, who sort of red dwarfing it out by themselves in space, who sort of get involved in this whole hijinks as well. So, but all of those disparate elements, just somehow he'd managed to tie them all together into just this really sort of beautiful story about, like, human striving and human nature and, our ancient myths and what they're about. And so all of that stuff is really cool. Now, I have to say, talked way too much at this point, but I do have to
dare
say, like many people who, the way I've heard this, like I was watching something the other day on a podcast or YouTube, and someone basically said, something about 9/11 just broke the minds of everyone who was over the age of 40 when it happened. And he's like, you might think
where
that
this is going.
You might think that, well, I mean, and so that basically that, at the end of his, his last couple of books are marked by a real pronounced and weird shift where suddenly he's much more obsessed with Islamophobia than he was prior to that, which I do think kind of colors everything a little bit, just like happened to my boy Frank Miller and
Frank Miller, who I started thinking of.
Yeah, and also who's the fucking Christopher Hitchens?
Oh, that's funny. I was thinking of him because like I always think of him as especially the guy who's like waterboarding. It's not that big of a deal. It's not even really torture, right? And then he got waterboarded. And he's like, that was the most horrible thing I've ever been. So I'm wrong. I'll admit when I'm wrong. That was fucked up.
So yeah, long story short, slight dip in quality at the end of his career in some things.
I mean, only if
some
you care about other
ways.
people.
Yeah, but overall, I do think the whole of his, whatever you want to say about that part of his legacy, he wrote some banger fucking books and some banger fucking short stories that I would really recommend, anybody who has even the slightest interest in literary science fiction or just general world building, like how to frame a cool story. He deserves to be checked out. He was a real generational talent. And if you read the story that brought him to Harlan Ellison's attention, the one where Harlan Ellison was like, everybody fucking drop what you're doing and pay attention to this fucking kid. It is haunting. It is just emotional to a way like it's hard that, will bring tears to your eyes. It's just a haunting short story. So really talented guy, really interesting career, interesting body of work. Dan Simmons.
Okay, I'm glad
you'll be missed.
I was so eager to ask his name again because at some point I really started losing confidence, and I was like, as soon as the recommendation is over, I've got to double check on that.
No, I know who my co-host is. It's okay. You can't help that you have ADHD.
Well, I mean, I could be better, right? I'm gonna be better. I'm trying every day to be better.
Do you take the ADHD meds? Do you take
No.
Concerta or anything like that?
I just smoke lots of weed. No, that's okay. So we're dealing with life and discoveries and whatever. This ADHD diagnosis hasn't come with a medical side of it yet. It's just been through therapy, and the idea there has kind of been like, oh, you made it this far, right? Just keep on trucking. And so, no medicines yet.
Wait, that's you or that's your psychiatrist saying
Well,
that?
that was my therapist. No, I know. You're not the first person to be like, And yet I go on unbothered, which is why, hey, more things I need to take care of, brain mysteries. But you're going to say about whatever this med was, and I don't know.
I'm not going to tell you what meds you should or should not be
but
taking.
you're bringing some. I'm not saying that. And by the way, this is all in the recording. We are going to tell you what medicines you should take. Please continue.
I'm just saying other people I know who have severe ADHD have benefited. I don't even know. Other people whose brains work very similarly to the way your brain works tell me that their lives were drastically improved after they started taking some ADHD meds. Now, one or two people did in fact get addicted to them and started using them as a substitute for taking methamphetamines. So that is also a flip side, but you lived in Montana. If you were going to get addicted to meth, it would have happened by now.
That's the hardest thing about living in Montana, dog, is knowing how fucking cool I'd be if I took some meth. Like, no, everybody else has a problem with it. And I'm like, no, I'm one of the guys that can take it. I'm going to be fine. It's going to be great if I do it. Like, everyone around me that looks like a goddamn scarecrow. No, but me, I'm pretty good at it. So, yeah, that's a pain in my ass. Kyle, two things we're going to do when I get back. One, secret language. Two, we're going to figure out what this whole meth thing's about.
All right. And on that note, we leave you, viewers.